this presentation, I'm going to talk about how you can support your child with distance learning. Right now, you may be feeling like this person, spinning countless plates in the air, trying to figure out which one can you drop, which one do you need to focus on. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you'll feel a little less stressed and more in control as to how you can balance all that you have on your plate. In this upcoming transition into online learning, we want to hold true to what our values are as a school. We still value holistic development, so it is our intention and hope that this online learning program still offers opportunities for our children to develop socially, emotionally, and in different realms of the academic circles, with physical development, music, art, as well as classroom. We also want to emphasize the well-being of all involved of online learning. So we want to look after the well-being of our students, our families, as well as our teachers. And lastly, we view parents as a partnership. We want you to reach out and stay connected during this time. It's through partnership that we can serve your child best and that we will see the most growth during this challenging time. And Welfare Institute and Junlei Lee said children process and deal with these things right along with grown-ups. So your child is going to be looking to you for how to react and what to and how to process this challenge. Just remember that as you're navigating life at home, that they are always watching and they'll process things just as you do. It's okay if some days they're cranky and don't want to do their work, or other days they're very excited. It's normal to have waves of different emotions. We just as adults need to be the stable force in our children's lives. During online learning and the time that we're away from school, we encourage you to connect through simple pleasures with your children. So go outside, do some activities, get them to help around the house, play old-fashioned board games, games that don't rely on technology and that you get to connect with. And build things, construct, figure out things that you can design together with recycled goods, Legos, blocks, anything really. Go back in time and find those simple pleasures that help you connect with your child. This will be such a meaningful activity that they will look forward to every day in spite of all that they're going through. Another thing you can do for your child, you can do it together or set them up to do it independently, is listen to podcasts. So if you're not familiar with podcasts, where should you start? Well, this is an opportunity to get to know your child even more. Ask them, what do they love? What are things they're interested in? What are things they want to find out more about? And then you can search through podcasts. There are thousands of podcasts out there. Find ones that work for your child or your family. Okay, where should you search? Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, there's a local app store. You can even look on Spotify now. There are lots of different places that you can find podcasts. And then some tips for listening. Listen them together. And when you're listening, you don't have to only be listening to a podcast. My favorite thing to do is listen to a podcast as I walk or as I'm doing the dishes and chores around the house. So it is something that you can multitask and do while you're doing something else. So listen together and then use them as a conversation starter. Like, don't quiz your kid on it. What did you learn from this? What did you take away from it? But really get them started to think about how they listened and what they listened to, and maybe apply it to their lives. Or just, what did you think about that podcast? So use it as a starter for a conversation, not a quiz. And then as you're listening, just listen to what you all enjoy. You may try a podcast that you thought you were going to love and you ended up hating it or the topic, or you may try something new and end up really enjoying it. So just take note and observe as to what your family enjoys listening to. And as I said earlier, Do something else at the same time. It is fine to multitask during when you're listening to podcasts. And then just one last warning, be aware of ads and age appropriate content. So with each podcast, they kind of have a little blurb about what they're about and maybe their target audience. And then if the target audience is an older crowd, then they're probably going to have some ads that may not apply to children. So just be aware of that. Another thing you can do together as a family or set your child up for is audiobooks. This gives them a chance to listen to their favorite books or new books. This is amazing for students who are learning English or younger students who may not have the reading skills yet to access higher level or chapter books, but they can still listen and follow along. And it just encourages children and adults to engage with literature in a different way. So again, with podcasts, like similar to podcasts, I listen to audiobooks while I'm doing other things. With my children, what I do is I play them before they go to bed at night, or they'll listen to them while they're coloring, and then I might ask them like, oh, could you draw your favorite part of the book that you just listened to? So you can find ways to embed and tie them into things in your daily life. So, as the IBDP candidate school, we have the approaches to learning. And so what these are skills that your child will develop throughout their time at United Lisbon. So I'll go through, there are 5 approaches to learning, and then how you can help your child develop these skills. So the first one we're going to look at is self-management. Self-management is having your child, become more organized, manage their time better, all of those skills that they need to function in different environments. So the first thing you can look at is the organization, and that might look just like the workspace. We all have our desks, we all have everything set up. So helping your child to set up their workspace and make sure it's organized in a way that makes sense to them so that they're not running all around the house trying to find a pencil when they have to do work. So everything kind of be organized in that one workspace. You could also help your child develop self-management skills by creating a schedule. So have your child co-create the daily schedule with them, looking at their weekly schedule. Make sure you include breaks, off the screen, chances for them to get some movement in, drink water. Really intentionally set those breaks throughout the day. And while you're making the schedule, help your child think about their sleep schedule as well. Ask them questions. Are you getting enough sleep? How might we ensure that you get more sleep? Should we set a bedtime, maybe a little earlier than normal because you're on the screen so much, or maybe a little later? So it's going to be different for every child. And what helps with the schedule or even just self-management is if you chunk your work time. We do this at school, so if you mirror what we do at school at home, this will really help your child. And what this looks like is your child will have a lesson with the teacher, and then they'll go off and do their activity. So if you chunk the work time, if your child's not able to focus for 30 minutes, that's okay. Chunk it and say, okay, let's do 5 minutes of work time, and then you get up and get to do 5 jumping jacks, and then let's get back to work 5 minutes again, and then so they can see that pattern of having work time and then having a break. Timers work beautifully for this, so use their device to set a timer, and then they know when their work time is. Another way you can support your child with self-management is to eliminate distractions. Eliminate distractions around their workspace or around the house. It may be as simple as, removing all the devices from the room that they're working in. Or it may be turning off the TV or music in the background. This is a chance for you to get to know your child and see how they work best. And so for the first few weeks, it may be a lot of observation and then reflecting with your child. I noticed when the TV was on, you kept looking up and watching it. Is that helping? And then you can have that conversation. And then lastly, as you notice with all of these things, intertwined is that dialogue with your child, and not you just setting the workspace and you doing the schedule and you doing all of that. It's really helpful if you are co-doing it with your child. So that will build independence. So they will, take notes from you and in your conversations, and hopefully continue to develop this skill of self-management. The next approach to learning is research. So we want our children to develop research skills. So what you can do to support your child is focus on inquiry. Ask your children, what are you interested in? What should we inquire into today? When they have that time that's not set to be on the device with the teacher, or if they have some free time, really ask them, what are you passionate about? What do you want to learn more about? And then set them up to go research it. So you can use online. They can actually research by asking questions to people they know around the community, their family members. So it doesn't have to be in front of a computer. Read articles together and discuss these concepts that keep coming up, perspective or cause and effect and change. And so you could maybe read the article and then summarize it for your child. Or there's tons of websites out there Time for Kids, or different articles or newspapers or magazines that have a kids kind of focus, so that the reading level is attainable for the children. And then lastly, to help them just develop those research skills, is ask your children questions. So, as you're driving in the car, as you're on a walk, ask, why do you think that there's a low tide today? And just posing those questions, and you don't have to answer them, but getting them to realize that asking questions is a powerful thing. It is the fuel to their learning. So those are some ways that you can help your child develop their research skills. The next approach to learning is communication. So at school, we have a very language-rich environment in terms of, there's text, there's labels all around the classroom, but you can also have a language-rich environment in your home. You can always be talking to your children. And this is an opportunity, if your child is a multi-language student, or you speak a different language at home, or mom speaks one language, dad speaks another, this is an opportunity for them to further develop their home language. So make sure you're having those conversations. You have opportunities to just enrich their communication by having lots of conversations. And then give them prompts to encourage or lead them to solve a problem. So it's easy as a parent or as an adult to want to solve the problem for them, or give them clues that basically give them the answer. But what is really encouraging and helps develop communication is to ask questions that are kind of open-ended, that allow them to take the reins and decide what to do next. So ask them, what can you try? Or what do you know? How can you check? So these are all open questions that help them to communicate their ideas better, or to think through their ideas before they go on to the next step and ask another question. So it's not telling them exactly what to do. They're having to ask the question or answer the question and then process what their next steps will be. The next approach to learning is social. So we have opportunities for children to socialize with morning meetings and during class time. And while that is great, we also want to find other ways for your children to connect, because that social element is so important and vital in young children and in adolescents as well. So maybe you could set up some Teams calls with kids in your child's class, or WhatsApp, or some platform. They could play iPad or tablet games together, Minecraft, with somebody else in their class. They can write letters or postcards to friends or family, and just have that connection and that ability to be social. And we're going to have to be creative. If you saw the newsletter article that I wrote last week, is, finding ways that your children can still connect with their friends and their peers and their family, even though we are in confinement or lockdown. And then with approaches to learning, the next one and the last one is thinking. So I love this quote from the Journal of Learning Sciences, the Journal of Learning Sciences, it says, allowing learners to struggle will actually help them learn better. And this kind of ties into what I was saying earlier, that, when we just give a child an answer, that's not strengthening their brain or their connections in the connecting those synapses in their brain. So we want them to build their thinking muscles. We want them to build their communication muscles. And the way we do that is letting them struggle. Okay? It's okay if your child is struggling a bit and frustrated. That will build up their skills and their confidence for the next time they face a challenge. So when we push thinking, it will be a little uncomfortable. It will feel, maybe there's some tears or maybe there's some complaining or frustration from your child. That's okay. Okay, reflect individually and as a family. So after the process has happened, maybe you aren't giving the answer to your child, or they're struggling with an assignment, and then not right in that moment, but maybe at night when you're putting them to bed or at dinner time, reflect with your child. Help them reflect individually, like ask them those questions. So going back to the communication, or maybe reflect as a family. I saw you were really frustrated when you were doing that math problem. What were you thinking? And getting them to process their thinking, but also verbalize it. And then again, continuing to develop your home language will encourage them thinking in multi-languages. Okay? So when we think of kids and learning and growing into adults, and even as adults, we become stronger through struggles that we face or challenges we face. And that's how our self-confidence is actually developed. We can tell ourselves a million times that we're the best at something, we're great, but it really comes to fruition, and we have kind of the proof of that when we struggle through something and we can see ourselves getting better. So if your child on Monday struggles through an activity, and they struggle and then they work through it, and by Friday that same activity is easier for them and they're not struggling, help them reflect on that through their thinking. What did you do that made that activity get easier? Or when you wanted to give up, what did you decide to do instead? So as the adult, we're kind of the facilitator of their thinking and helping them by asking those probing questions and letting them be a little uncomfortable. So I wanted to talk about play, and play as learning, and play is learning. So your child, in your schedule with your child, please do build some time for play into the day. Play is natural problem-based learning. They are figuring out problems, they are solving problems, they are sometimes avoiding problems while they play, but it is a natural problem-based situation. As your child plays, observe them. See what problems they're solving and how they're solving them. And then let your child take the lead. What do they want to play? Where do they play? Who do they play with? If they have a sibling, which sibling do they choose to play with? Or maybe they're choosing to play independently. So let your child take the lead. Again, it kind of goes back to what I was just speaking about, of letting your child struggle. So often in a child's lifetime, we are telling them what to do. And we want to make sure that they have the choice and the autonomy and the voice in what they're doing. So give them opportunities for free, unstructured play. Let them be bored. Let them figure out, how do I entertain myself? And you'll be amazed at what they come up with. So play is learning. And to follow up on that, play helps children process their emotions. It helps them express their own uncertainty. You may be watching and observing your child as they're playing, and they are playing dramatic play, and maybe they're talking to their stuffed animal, and they're actually almost doing a counseling session with that stuffed animal about their feelings and how they feel uncertain during these times. Play helps children calm their anxiety as well as assert control. Going back to that confidence piece, they feel in control when they are playing. And that is something during this online learning time, when they are in such a flux of different feelings and different environments, that it is important for them to feel in control. And lastly, your self-care is very important. We understand that you are working and supporting your child at the same time. You are managing a house and working and raising children, all within, without an opportunity to really have a break. So one of the ways you can practice self-care is to let your child do the work. It is very tempting to just jump in and help your child with a math problem or post on Seesaw or a project. And while that is with the best intentions of wanting to help, it also is taking time that you could be using for something else. In addition, it also is kind of not giving the teacher a realistic picture of where your child is. So your child may be struggling with a task or an assignment or an activity that's posted, and if you go in and do the work, the teacher is going to assume that your child's able to do it and will progress further and do a more challenging activity the next time. So let your child do the work. Let your child clean up after themselves. Let your child create their schedule. And if they, don't do something properly, or if they choose to watch TV when they're supposed to be doing a project, there'll be a natural consequence. They won't have their work done, and they'll have to tell their teacher why they didn't get it done. So let your child have the control and do the work, and you just kind of facilitate and support along the way. Okay, the next one is keep a positive attitude. And this may be very challenging, but there are ways to keep positive attitude, or to keep your attitude positive. And those are things that investing in time and investing your time into things that give you joy or that help you remain positive. It could be going out on a walk. It could be binge watching Netflix for a night. It could be, there's multiple ways to continue to have a positive attitude, but really, as I said in the very first slide, your child is looking to you, and how you react and how your attitude goes is how theirs is going to go. Wellness. Make sure you're keeping track of your wellness. Not just like what you're eating, but get out and be physical, get outside, get fresh air. We as adults sometimes put ourselves last, but you also need to prioritize your wellness. Find healthy ways to relieve stress, and that again looks different for everyone. And then lastly, reach out and connect. If you are struggling, reach out to a friend, a family member, the teacher, if you're really wanting to talk about your child and how you can support them more, Miss Monica, our counselor. But don't let yourself become an island and be isolated. So make sure you reach out and connect. And then lastly, we are here to help. So following up on the reaching out, please do, if you're noticing your child struggling, or you all are struggling to keep the schedule, or the work is too challenging, please reach out to your child's teacher, or our counselor, Miss Monica, or myself, or Dr. Azque. We are here to help and support you, and it is, as I said, the very first slide, it's a partnership. We see the school, United Lisbon, working with parents to help grow our children into good humans. So that's it for the approaches to learning and how to support your child with distance learning. Please do take some time to look at this, and if you have any questions, reach out. Thank you.